So greetings everyone, good evening, good afternoon from whichever part of the world you are joining in today. Welcome to the 61st session of the online Optom learning series or OOLS. Let me introduce to you our speaker for today. So today we have Dr. Chandrashekhar Chawan. He is an optometrist who finished his diploma in optometry and then went ahead to do a PhD in physics from the University of Bombay. He is also a fellow of the Scleral Lens Education Society, United States. He is well known as the inventor of cosmetic or prosthetic lenses, RGP lenses, as well as various designs in terms of scleral lenses. He is a scleral lens consultant himself, where he works on patients fitting scleral lenses. He is also a myopia control practitioner, an orthokeratologist, optometrist, of course, and an ocularist that adds on to his qualifications. He is a member of the American Society of Ocularists. He is practicing not only in Bombay, which is in India, but he also practices in Orlando and also in Florida, USA. He also offers special effect contact lenses for movies, Bollywood, Hollywoods, or various TV industries around the world. His name is also listed in the world's Who's Who dictionary in the USA. And recently, he has received he has gotten the patent grant for his invention of coal catalyst for reduction of coal usage and pollution. I think that's a very interesting thing, Dr. Chandrashekar, I found in your bio, which is he has a patent as well. And today he's going to talk to us about scleral lenses being his specialty. How do we use aberration control optics in scleral lenses to achieve phenomenal vision? I think 6.6 is just a number, but I think your patients would be seeing more than 6.6, right? So he's going to talk to us about how we go about fitting scleral lenses with aberration control lenses. So welcome, sir, onto our platform. And I hope I've done justice to your introduction being, very vast. Welcome again, and thank you. I'll leave the screen time to you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me on your show. And this is really fantastic to be with you all. Especially you have been doing a fantastic job for the optometry education and around the world. So let us go into the topic. Today I'm going to specifically talk only into the vision aspects of scleral lenses, because I have seen a lot of practitioners, they feel happy even if they achieve 20/30 or 20/40 vision or 6/9, 6/12 vision for keratoconus. They say, oh, he's keratoconus. He was almost finger counting and we could get him to 6/9 or 6/12. He should be happy. I personally don't feel happy because I strive to give the best to the patient. It is possible. It is not impossible task. You just have to play around a little bit more. Now here my PhD in optics helps me, physics helps me, and that's why I selected this topic to share my tricks with you guys, so that you can also give 20/20 vision. Of course, it is not possible in 100% of the cases, but yes, it is possible in almost, in my case, it is almost 96% of the patients who can see 20/20. So these are my gurus, Dr. B.T. Maskati, Dr. Kuresh Maskati. Thanks to them, whatever I am today. Then I started learning my scleral lenses from the father of scleral lenses, Don Ezekiel from Australia. And of course, then Dr. Perry Rosenthal introduced me to the modern scleral lens technologies and the wonders of, Vision 20/20. So most of the patients that we see are something like this, kind of scary to look, undergone corneal the transplantations and whatnot. Most of them are keratoconus and all. So only hope for these people is scleral lenses. So it not only gives a vision, It gives comfort as well as it acts as a bandage. So it tries and heals the corneal irregularities in ocular surface disorders. These are the various companies across US and India and around the world who are supplying scleral lenses. You can choose, you can start with any of those. I have so many scleral lens trial set. Apart from my own Chandra scleral lenses, universal scleral lenses, I have my own designs because I learned from Perry Rosenthal, and that's how we started. Having our own lathe machines and playing around with CAD/CAM software and designing, and that's how we could enter into the more nitty-gritty of the parameters, which normally scleral lens companies won't share with you. Uh, uh, this particular Boston side scleral lens is very superior, I would say, in terms of vision. Not because I was first fellow of Boston Foundation for Sight, but this is the technology that offers you more to the vision than just a fitting. As I said, most of the time, almost 80% of our patient loads are keratoconus patients. Of course, most of you or already all of you knows what is keratoconus. The cornea becomes conic and the vision get distorted because of the irregularity of the cornea, because that is the main optical lens in the eye. Uh, PMCD is again challenging because the thinning is at the periphery. The cornea again gets distorted and vision is again gone for the toss. Keratoglobus is again an issue. Penetrating keratoplasty is commonly done for treating keratoplasty, which is outdated technology as far as I'm concerned, because you have a lot of other, DLK, partial thickness, and a lot of other technologies. Even if you talk surgically, CXL and corneal rings, etc., to restore the vision. Because the problem with total penetrating keratoplasty is the cornea is somebody else's cornea and it has a life which doesn't match with your life. So cornea can become opaque over a period of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I know there are a lot of people who will say that we have 30 years, 40 years good cornea, but ask the patient who has undergone keratoplasty, he is always afraid of getting rejections and putting a lot of medicine and going to the ophthalmologist every now and then to remove the sutures and whatnot. Intax became very popular when it launched by the companies. FDA approval was for the myopia, but they used off-label for keratoconus to stretch the cornea and get a better vision. But it doesn't work all the time unless it is properly selected and additional technique has been performed on these patients. Again, radial keratotomy. I'm giving you just examples of this kind of patients who have a lot of difficulties getting a 20/20 vision because the cornea is already totally irregular and a lot of opacity sometimes. So let us go into the subject. What is aberration? Okay, so we have basically spherical aberration and chromatic aberrations. So if you start with this much, you will understand what I'm trying to say. So in spherical aberrations, what happens is we can correct spherical aberration with spherical power lenses, cylindrical power lenses. That's so all. Only we have two choices. But the spherical aberration doesn't stop. It enters into first degree, second degree, third degree, like chroma and other irregular hexagonal and a lot of other distortions that generally cannot be corrected with the spectacle lenses. That's why you have to use liquid to mask this irregularity. How that can be used? You can use RGP contact lenses or scleral lenses. Now coming to scleral lenses, you can control this aberration with eccentricity on front or back surface of the scleral lens. Secondly, depending on the corneal shape, you have to select roulette or oblate designs. And optical centration also is must. I'm giving you a in gist, I very short time I have and I have to cover a lot of stuff. So I'm giving you to information as quickly as possible. So coming back to chromatic aberrations, most of you almost know that if you put any lens, it will divert white light, break white light into individual wavelengths, red to violet, and it will fall on different portions of the retina. Now, similar thing happens in the camera. So what they do, they put a combination of plus and minus lenses to keep on correcting the aberrations that is being introduced because of the white light. This is very well known to everyone. That's why I'm giving you this example. In the eye also, there is a system nature has prepared to negate the chromatic aberrations. If you have seen, if you have a large dilated pupil, even a patient who's normal and you dilate him, he has difficulty driving, he has difficulty seeing because the peripheral cornea introduces a lot of aberrations on the retina. So there is a diaphragm that controls the amount of light, and of course the optics of the cornea and lens, and of course vitreous and aqueous, etc. So when we talk about eyes that are keratoconus or corneal grafts, they are not regular corneas, it is irregular corneas. Plus, many times we have found that the sclera is also irregular, and you need a specially customized lens, quadrant specific or impression technology lenses to match the sclera also. Otherwise, as the scleral lens means the lens rests on the sclera. If your sclera is irregular, the lens is going to rock, or because of the lid pressures, the lens optics can squeeze, and again that can lead to distortion in the vision. So I have collected data from a general population about 15 years back. Actually, on the topographer, I just collected everyone, normal patients. I just put one. I took one stall in one show, and whatever normal population was passing through, I offered them a free eye testing. Actually, it was not a free eye testing, but just free checkup if they need any glasses. So autoref and topographer. I was more interested in topographer. So this is what I found. In fact, this is my own eye. So my right eye has a 0.6 of eccentricity, and left eye has 1 eccentricity. I'm 6'6" in both eyes, or 20/20. But still there is a difference in ECC. Why? Because the shape of the eyeball, the nature has created the cornea in such a way that it will focus the rays into, because the retina is curved, right? So the curvature of the cornea keeps on changing to get the focus all over around the same. This is a hyperopic cornea. This is +2 diopters, and he has a 0.3 eccentricity. This is myopic cornea, and it has 0.8 eccentricity. I'm just giving an example. This, in fact, is the famous, scleral lens guru, Tom Arnold's eyeball. So 0.8 eccentricity. In keratoconus, we have found many times you don't get proper, topography, because even a smallest diversion in taking a topography information can give you a lot of different things. But when you take a lot of images or a lot of topo shots, you get something like this. So about 1.6. So what is eccentricity? I'll explain you in a diagram just to understand. But what I'm trying to stress is, in normal person, the eccentricity starts from 0 to 1. But whereas irregular corneas, or especially keratoconus corneas, will have 1.3 eccentricity. So this is how actually I did one experiment. I used the scleral lens and taken a topography, information from the scleral lens itself, just to see what is happening on the scleral lens. So I use, of course, this trial set, because they only have the eccentricity trial set as of now in the market. Rest of the people have a spherical, or even if they have eccentric surface, they don't say anything. But this particular Boston side scleral lens fitting set has a trial set with a 0 ECC, 1 ECC, and 2 ECC. These are their trademark numbers. That's it. They will not tell you exactly how much is the ECC, but these three will suffice you to get to 20/20 or 6/6 vision. I personally have a lot of other combinations, right from 0 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 to 0.8, zero point 0.9, like that. So depending on the patient's need, I keep on changing the lenses. Of course, it's a trial and error, so you have to make many lenses, so that adds to the cost of making lenses. But giving a 20/20 vision is, you cannot compare with anything. So just to give you again an idea of what is eccentricity, or sometimes it is called asphericity also, the amount of curvature that keeps on changing as it goes to the periphery, from center to periphery. So that is called ECC. So a total circular eyeball will have zero ECC, right? And as you go flattening, it will have about zero point 0.3, zero point 0.6, zero point 0.9, like that. And this circular diagram will give you understanding about how it is, what is the curvature at that particular point. So these three lenses in trial set, 0 ECC, 1 ECC, and 2 ECC, can help you almost 80 to 90% of your patient to achieve 6/6 or 20/20 vision. So what I did is, on this experiment I talked about, I took the front surface of the scleral lens and found the topography. And this is what I found. On 0 ECC, it is almost a regular spherical lens. On 1 ECC, I found this about 1.2 ECC. I don't want to disclose their secrets, but this is what I found. And this is 1.8 ECC. You can see the corneal mapping here. So this is now actually scleral lens front surface, you can say. So this is how it is to mask the irregularity of the cornea, right? So this is just to give you in 3D map. So 0 ACC, 1 ACC, and 2 ACC. So there is a difference in the front surface of that scleral lens to mask the irregularity of the cornea, which a normal water also cannot mask. As I showed the example of a camera lens, you need a lot of combination of different lenses with a proper specific curvature as well as proper specific refractive index. So this is, if you see, this is a normal cornea, this is a keratoconus cornea. You can see the vast difference in the shape of the keratoconus cornea. So this is what you are to trying to neutralize. So to neutralize, the factors to be considered is oblate cornea or prolate cornea. Now, if you put a oblate cornea and use a prolate scleral lens base curve, it is not going to give you a proper vision because it's going to form a negative film inside. A tear lens will have a negative, and on an oblate, if you put prolate, again it is going to have issues. So you need to match the curvature of the cornea. Like in keratoconus, it is a oblate cornea. Whereas if you have a patient with who has undergone CXL or undergone intracorneal rings, Kera rings, or corneal transplant, he needs a prolate because his cornea is now flat. So you need a base curve of scleral lens about 8 or 8.2, 8.4, something like that. Of course, you have to try with the trial set and you will see what I'm talking about. You will get a better vision if your curvature all closely matches with the corneal curvatures. Then once you have the back surface managed, the front surface you can match or change depending on the eccentricity that you can offer and try different ways so that you get a better vision. So front surface eccentricity, I also try back surface eccentricity also sometimes when my limitation is over with front surface, then I start working on back surface. So I could do this because I have my own machineries or I have contacts with the manufacturers who are, uh, happy to help me. Many times, if you discuss with your laboratory, they will be happy to help you and play around with whatever you want. Of course, you should be knowledgeable about what you want to try. And of course, their consultant will, of course, help you to understand and make a lens specially for you. Then second thing is centration is more important. Otherwise, there is a prismatic effect. the optics doesn't match with the optics of the visual axis, then again you are introducing another aberrations, spherical or chromatic aberrations. Then the media opacities is nothing to do with the visual acuity. You will get 20/20 or 6/6 vision. If there is a media opacity, the contrast will go down. The quality of vision will be less. But on visual chart, you will be able to make them read 6/6 or 20/20. Then, of course, if the patient has undergone IOL or ICL, then of course it's a different story, because the visual axis and the center of that optics of the IOL or CXL will make a difference. I have had a lot of issues with this kind of patients, so that's why you cannot give 20/20 to 100% of the patients. Some patients will have issues. The next option that I would like to say is the central clearance. We usually keep about 350 microns, but for my the eye jewelry lenses, that is, I use real diamond and gold into the scleral lens and offer this as a eye jewelry. There I have to keep more than 400 microns, and that's where the vision goes down. In normal patient, it is not much of a problem because their rest of the optics is perfect. But in keratoconus patients and other corneal irregularity patients, this matters. So you have to keep 350 to around 300 microns. 250 is very good, but depends on what kind of patient you are fitting with. Second thing is, if there is a decentered lens, if you have a lens which is riding low, you can see this fluorescent, a tear layer, which is offering you a prismatic effect. So that can also add into the vision compromise. So if you consider all these points, then I know it is difficult to center, but it is possible. If you go large diameter, you can center well. So uh, if you add more thickness, central thickness or more central clearance, you will have issues. Plus, the thickness of the lens also can add to extra spherical aberrations. If you have done one experiment during your 11th and 12th, a simple optics ray, you pass through a slab of glass, you will see a separation. The more the thickness of the glass, the more the separation, right? So that gives you more aberrations, spherical aberrations, and there will be a internal reflection also, and that can cause vision to get distorted, or glare will be there. Now, many times you get a patients, apart from corneal issues, they may have issues with the iris, hydrogenic trauma, or iris has been cut for whatever reason, and the peripheral cornea will add to a lot of aberrations. Now that can be covered with my iris painted scleral lenses, uh, and you can create an artificial pupil in front of the cornea. As I said, the curvature of the lens as well as the amount of light reaching on the retina is important. So that control of the iris can be created with the iris painted lenses. This is how I give the matching of the colors also. Iris coloboma patients has now options. You catch them young and they can have a 20/20 vision for life. These are variety of lenses that I offer. Of course, the same technology I use for total corneal opacities. Of course, you can add a tint on the scleral lenses also for sports and other thing, or to increase the contrast sensitivity, or in color blindness patients, because 1 in 10 is color blind. So in summary, keratoconus patients has highly irregular cornea, and with scleral lens, vision can be improved to near normal. Use correct back surface or back curve BC, like prolate or oblate cornea will have a proper prolate or oblate base curve scleral lenses. Front surface or back surface eccentricity can be ordered on the scleral lenses. Centration of the scleral lens with the visual axis can be achieved with change of diameter of the lenses, and limit the clearance, central clearance to 350 microns, and to reduce the central aberrations. These are my references. These are my email IDs if you want to contact me for any reason. Thank you very much. I'll stop here.
Okay, so thank you so much, sir. I think it was a very informative talk. I think it's very important for us to, as you said, you need to be knowledgeable and understand the cornea, whether it's prolate, oblate, and then accordingly, put the lens on. So it's very important in that way. I do have a connecting question. I know I have mentioned this you before. There was one session on sports vision which we had in our series, and there was a question on whether photochromatic lenses would be beneficial for them, and I did mention that probably Dr. Chandrashekhar Chawan has that technology where you can create transition of photochromatic scleral lenses. So if you can just give a small highlight of that.
Right. Thank you, Fakhruddin, for asking me this. As of now, I am the only one who has that kind of buttons, photochromatic buttons, where I can make scleral lenses out of that, and it just works like a regular photochromatic spectacles. Uh, if you're talking about sports, I would not advise a photochromatic lens on a regular sports basis because instead I would advise a tint because if you add say ambermatic tint on a scleral lens, people who are doing a lot of night sports,
Mhm.
the contrast is such a fantastic phenomenal. They can see much sharper. It is not a sharpness, it is the brain's acceptance of that moving objects. I did one experiment with one New Zealand team had come to India, and I think Omar or someone, the tall guy, and I had a dinner meeting with them. I was special invitee, so I offered him a the amber tinted soft lens for his refractive error, and next day he used that lens and he scored century. Uh,
Wow.
of course, I offer this to other Indian players also. I can't give the names.
Okay.
These celebrities are you know uh, picky about that, but
Yes.
it does help. Of course, for color blindness, the red tint helps a lot. As I mentioned, there is a big number of colorblind people. The statistics shows that 1 in 10 population is colorblind. So that can also help to increase, or the vision can be, the quality of vision can be improved with tinting or photochromatic, or you know uh, adding some extra benefits to that.
Okay, that's wonderful. And yeah, we do have questions pouring in. So let's just take some questions from the audience, sir. Uh, the first question is about asking you, does the paint or the print of the iris affect the oxygen transmissibility, the decay by T?
Good, Partha. You asked this question. That is the uniqueness of my technology, where it doesn't change or affect the decay by T. The oxygen permeability of the lens remains the same because I don't use pigments. It
Okay.
is not a solid particle, it is a dye. If you understand the difference between dye and pigment. So when I use dye, and it is not a surface painting, I have a technique where I introduce my dyes into the matrix of the lenses. So the decay by T doesn't change.
That's great. Yeah. And is it your lenses or the Boston lenses? Sorry,
Any any
I
any
any of
material
the
on
lenses.
the earth, Boston, Contamac, any material. Now, if you know, there is a good news. There is a 200 DK material coming in the market. FDA has just got given approval for that. So any kind of material you give me, and I can paint it on that
Okay, that's
without
wonderful.
affecting the decay by T.
Yeah, that's very
That's
important,
more
right? Because
important, I know. Previously, I started with painting a regular, pigments, but it keeps on coming out, and it is not. People, even I have used, and a lot of people have used soft contact lenses as a piggyback to, create that iris effect. But the decay by T will again go down because of the extra layer. The technology that I have to offer is, the dyes are vaporized into the matrix, and it's amazing.
Amazing. Okay. And let's look at the next question. Is there any upper age limit in regards to the suitability of scleral lens based on your experience?
Well, as long as the patient can insert and remove the lenses, I don't see age should be factor. Everybody has to see, even if they are 90-year-old or 100-year-old, they want to see clearly, right? I
Absolutely.
have few patients, age, since it is a age-related topic, is asked. They have rheumatoid arthritis, and the fingers were, so much they cannot. The hands are shaky. It's very difficult to insert, remove. It's a lot of difficulty. But believe me, they want to see clearly. So they will spend that 15 minutes or half an hour extra. They buy all those gadgets where they don't have to use hands, but they put on the stand on the table, and they go like this and insert the lens, so they can overcome their limitations by using some tricks. But there is no upper age limit. At the same time, let me explain you, there is no lower age limit also. For me, I have my youngest patient, 8-month old. The baby was aphakic. She wanted plus 64 diopters. The RGP lens of 64 diopters that thick cannot center on that small cornea. So we fitted her with the scleral lens. But it is very difficult to insert a scleral lens without causing a bubble in the baby. But so we employed a fenestrated scleral lens technology, and today that girl is I think almost 26-year-old. Of course, she has one eye amblyopia, but one eye she has 20/20 vision. I would like to mention one more point here. Christine Shin is another famous optometrist who has introduced this iPrint Pro technology, and she has a fantastic way of inserting scleral lenses with a little jelly like, so instead of normal saline, you can use some little thicker viscous material inside, and you can slip it into the cornea without causing any bubble. She has a video also on the YouTube, so if you're interested, you can see. So age limit is not a problem. You can, as long as they need to see clearly, you can offer them any at any age.
Okay. So there's no age upper, there is no age lower. I think where there is a will, there will be a way. As you said,
Sure.
they'll have the additional devices to put in the lens. Yeah. Okay. Is there any possibility to correct the internal astigmatism by utilizing the front surface of the scleral lens?
Sure, yeah, yeah, of course. As I said, the technology doesn't stop at eccentricity. You can have a front astigmatism, like, we say toricity, front surface toricity, or even back surface toricity. So you have options. As we have toricity on the haptic to match the sclera, quadrant specific toricity, same thing for the front surface. So
It
you
can
can
be
have a
done.
cylindrical power incorporated into the lens, and that can be easily managed. And incidentally, Boston Sight lenses gives that kind of facility also for their lenses.
Okay. And which lenses would you prefer in terms of swimmers? And would overnight ortho K lenses would be better for them, or you would advise them scleral lenses?
See, now when you talk about ortho K, that means you are talking about a normal cornea, not keratoconus,
Okay.
right? So ortho K is my first choice because that's the best lens in the world. You can play wonders with ortho K. Sorry that I'm wearing presbyopic glasses, but I have my own ortho K lenses for near vision also. Now because of the lockdown, I'm at home not much, so I'm using bifocals. But ortho K is best for any age, even for presbyopia, myopia. Of course, hypermetropia, there is a limitation up to plus 3, but yes, it works.
It was.
you know so for swimmers, people who are into sports, I have a lot of patients who go for skiing. They are international ski champions from India, in the US also. So they will benefit enormously with ortho-K because you have, spectacle free throughout the day, and you're putting that lenses in the night at home, so you're almost, all the time you are safe.
Right.
So yes, ortho-K is definitely advisable for swimmers.
Okay. And if let's say the cornea is not regular, would you advise them wearing sclerals for swimming? Just out of
Okay,
curiosity.
now this is a controversial question.
Yeah.
That scleral lenses should be allowed into the swimming or not. If you ask me, I allow them
Okay.
only with a rider that as soon as they come out of the swimming pool, they carry their trials, all the solutions, everything. They come out of the swimming pool, they put the hydrogen peroxide, they put the lenses into hydrogen peroxide. By the time they take shower, this, that, freshen up, and get dressed. So that will give another half an hour, 1 to 45 minutes. Then again they can clean the lenses and use the lenses. Of course, if you put in hydrogen peroxide, it won't get neutralized in half an hour, but you can take it out and use a lot of saline, neutralize with multi-purpose solutions. Again, saline, again multi-purpose. You go 5, 6 cycles of that. Make sure that all hydrogen peroxide is gone, and then fill up with the normal saline and insert. So I said it's better to have scleral lenses so that they can see. See, most of the patients who want to undergo in water, not only a swimming pool, but a lot of people go on sea,
Diving and
like
all that.
on Sundays. So if you ask them to keep their lenses at home and go for enjoying on the sea, no, it's impossible. They know that, of course you have to tell them this is what it is. You can have an acanthamoeba infections, you can have a lot of other infections because that water, anyway, that water has a lot of bacteria and dirty things in that, so they're well aware of that. But anyway, even if you don't wear scleral lenses, you are exposing the whole cornea to that water, right?
Yeah.
So at least you have a scleral lens that will protect the cornea from that dirty water going inside, because the normal saline will not allow that to, of course, the bacteria, everything will eventually enter inside, but it will take time. It won't just go inside. And when you come out of your, swimming pool or sea, beach or whatever, then you can, of course, take it out, clean it there and there itself. You cannot come home and clean.
Mm.
In that washroom, changing room, you have to do this. If you are allowed to do, if you are going to do that way, then yes, you can wear scleral lenses.
So I think
Take care of the lenses also, because they are part of your body. See what we did, your irregular cornea we replace with this piece of plastic, right, to get you a clear vision. So you have to take care of that plastic. Otherwise that is going to cause you problems. Yeah.
yeah. So make sure that your patient understands all this and then suggest something which is
Correct.
out of this. Yeah. Okay, a couple of more questions. What would be the difference of aberrations in terms of mini sclerals versus large scleral lenses? Any tips on that?
Okay. Savita, give me one company who has a, whatever is your miniscleral lens definition.
Mm.
If they offer aberration control optics, you better use it. Okay. Uh, of course, the Scleral Lens Education Society says miniscleral is up to 16 mm. More than 16 mm is full scleral. So that's why I said like this. So Boston side has 16 mm, 17 mm, and whatever customized up to 21 mm. There are so many other companies in the US who offer all kind of diameters. But I hate to put anything less than 16 mm, which is called minisclerals, in from my perspective, because most of the minisclerals will not sit on sclera, but they will press on limbus,
Yes.
where there are limbus stem cells. Okay, manufacturers have made smaller and smaller diameter lenses to make life easy for practitioners, because as you go away, if you go larger diameter, the more of a irregularity of the sclera comes into play, and you have to match the haptics to that sclera. That's why the manufacturers came with a smaller and smaller lenses. And that's why the concept of mini scleral lens came in. It works, but if you ask me, personally, I don't like them, because most of the corneas that I am dealing with are sick corneas. They have some problems. They have some issues, and uh, it is, I call it a prosthesis. That means the lens is the whole life. They have to use this device for whole life.
Yeah.
So, is it good idea to compromise the stem cells around? We still don't know what is happening, going to happen in long terms. We don't know the pressure increase in because of the lens usage is going to cause any further damage. There are a lot of research going on around the world, but I don't want to be part of that. I will better go with large diameter scleral lens that is more comfortable. Centration is better, and you get a more clearance over the limbus, and you are you know giving this as a bandage. You are covering and protecting the cornea as well as the limbal stem cells. And as far as the aberration control is concerned, yes, they can definitely do it. It's optics. Is the CNC machine that does this, the aberration control. If your manufacturer doesn't know how to employ that aberrations, then nobody can teach them. But most of the manufacturers I know, they are smart. They know the technology is almost same with everyone. There are most of the time there are only two machines, Sterling, Precitech, and the that is called Optom, and another technology is DAC machine. So both the machines are capable of giving aberration control optics, front, back, or whatever. So of course they can give you aberration control, whatever the diameter of your lens. Now let me tell you another thing also. They can give you aberration control on RGP lenses also, corneal RGP I'm talking.
Corneal GP lenses.
So you, that is optics. So you can use, the diameter is irrespective. Now let me talk a little more on the history of scleral lenses. When it started, the PMMA material, of course, it started with the glass. And then when the PMMA material came, it became the choice. And they used to take the impression and make a lens like we, as an ocularist, I make, lenses like that. And they will put a power and everything in the center. But that lens will not allow oxygen to pass through, and patient will get a lot of discharge every 2-3 hours. So that's how they started making the lenses smaller and smaller, and that's how the corneal lenses came up. If you remember, about 30-40 years back, there were corneal lenses, there were PMMA corneal lenses. Then the invention of oxygen permeability came up. Thanks to Dr. Perry Rosenthal again, who's my guru. He set up this company called Polymer Technology, which is still there. Now it is known by, there are so many other companies who have bought it, but they are the one who makes this oxygen permeable plastic buttons. And then as he came up with 15 DK, 30 DK, 45 DK, around that time, Don Ezekiel used that oxygen permeable materials and the fenestrated scleral lens technology because he wanted the oxygen to pass through. And that's how the whole thing again started. And it's a history. We are coming back to scleral lenses.
Yeah.
It's of course because of the more and more oxygen permeable material. That's what I was happy to share, that now 200 DK material is also available. Of course, 100 DK is sufficient, but we have more and more oxygen permeable materials. It is good for the health of the cornea.
Yeah, and we must remember, as you said, we are going to fit them on sick cornea, so we want
Yeah,
the best for that cornea.
right.
Okay, a couple of more questions. Would custom-made scleral lenses, in terms of example, is aberration control lens, increase the cost to the patient? That's the one part of it. And how many percentage of patient would benefit from considering the E-centricity in terms of custom ordered in scleral lenses?
Okay, for me, all scleral lenses are custom ordered. There is no ready-made scleral lens. Okay, now I will take this custom order lenses as a specialty lenses where the sclera is irregular. Say there is a surgery has been done, there is a bleb, or there is too much of toricity or pinuncula or anything. So there I use impression technology so that the haptic is exactly matching. Because if the haptic is not matching, your scleral lens will, squeeze, and the optics will be distorted again. So this is about the custom made scleral lens. As far as the optics is concerned, Most of the labs will offer these optics at no extra cost. Okay, that depends on you and the lab, but I don't think there is much of a cost to that. It's only the knowledge to you as well as to your lab. So if they are willing to offer you this, they will definitely offer. And again, I'm again and again telling Boston side, because they have this facility. Okay, I have no financial interest with them. I don't get any, money from them, or I'm not consultant to them. I left Boston Foundation. I was a fellow of them when I was the first fellow who brought this technology to this part of the world in India. I trained people around, traveling across India, and then of course I am no more with them. Whatever I am is my own lenses, but of course I'm part of, means I still have the access to the technology. And I'm certified, or the practitioner for Boston side lenses. And I use their lenses wherever I need. Plus, when I have my own designs, I have my own manufacturing facilities in India, and for some special type of manufacturing, I have tie-ups with the companies in the US.
Right.
So extra cost, it depends on you whether you want to charge more for the to the patient or not. So that is, I'm not going to discuss that. It's up to you what to charge and what not to charge.
That's right. That's right. And how to proceed in patients with large angle kappa, probably patients with high hyperopia, with eccentric corneas. Any tips on managing those kind of patients? Because as you said, centration is most important and all that. Would that alter in terms of getting the centration well?
Central clearance. You go as close to the cornea as possible, so the angle is not distorted.
Okay. All right.
Even
And
if you take your own spectacle or anything, you try to take it forward and backward, the optics is totally changed, right? So it is
yeah.
better to have as close. See, that's why RGP lenses works better.
Okay.
They give more vision, sharper vision, because it touches the cornea almost, right?
Right.
So same thing, scleral lens you want to manage, you try to go as around 200 microns. You can easily go with safe,
It's safe.
because you have to consider the how much lens is going to settle on the cornea by the end of 6 hours, 8 hours.
That's right.
So it is been observed that about 120 micron of residence will be there throughout the day. There are a lot of factors, the stresses of the sclera, the conjunctiva, and a lot of stuff, how much the lens can, push in. But about 120 minimum you have to keep safe limit. So you can go 150, 180, 200 is the safe limit
Okay.
for the central clearance.
Okay, and this is just kind of a connecting question. Would you recommend using an OCT to measure compared to the traditional fluorescein measurement of the volt? Any tips on that? Would you prefer to do an anterior
Yeah,
segment OCT?
Mr. Hing, I will definitely like to use OCT, because that gives you more information, right?
That's right.
The fluorescein is just going to give you a rough estimate that okay, you're not touching. That's it. So but OCT will give you more detail, exact microns, where in the center, periphery, at the limbus, on the sclera, everywhere you can get a perfect information. So see, the technology is coming to you for some reason, right?
Yeah.
Use it. If you have OCT, why not? That's the best thing. But don't forget your old techniques, because if you have OCT, but of course, even if I have OCT, I'll still put a fluorescein and insert the lens, because that gives me immediate understanding whether it is touching here, periphery, where. I don't have to put the patient on the OCT every time I put the lens. My final fit, when I'm satisfied with my final fit, okay, this is the lens I want to order, then I will put him on OCT and take the measurements and make myself assured, yes, this is perfect in the center, this much clearance, periphery, this much clearance, not touching on the limbus, landing zone is perfectly balanced, everything is fine, there is no prismatic effect, and then I order.
Okay.
So OCT, if you have, go ahead, do it.
Yeah. And couple of more questions before we, this thing. As for the prismatic effect or the prismatic effect induced by the tear lens power between, which is the volt, as you shown in one of your picture, can we use the correcting horizontal or vertical deviation? Probably induced prism. I think that's what he means.
Oh, see, for such a for the prism cause because of the decentration, I haven't used prism on the lens optics, but prism can be incorporated on the optics. That technology is there, but that is used in very rare cases and for different calls, not to match the decentration that is caused because of you.
Because
Better
of that.
increase the diameter
Yeah.
and get the perfect fitting so that you don't have to play around with the addition. See, you add prism on the lens, what you're going to do, you're increasing the thickness of the lens.
Yeah.
More the thickness of the lens in one side is again going to introduce aberrations,
Yeah.
chromatic as well as
Very good.
the spherical aberrations. So I would say if it is minor, then no, unless it is for screen or you want to use the image on the parafoveal region for macular degeneration or any other reasons, then you can use prism on the optics of the scleral lens.
Okay.
Age-related macular degenerations or something like that, when you want an image to shift
Mhm.
on one side, then you use the prisms.
Yeah, to get the image, yes, but not to neutralize the prism because it will.
I would say it's a waste of.
Yeah, I think you're trying to get good vision, but then when you induce prism, as you said, it will make it more worse.
It will make a life difficult because you see the if you go back to that image, the prism is base down, right?
Mm.
Now you are going to put a base up prism. So the thickness of the top is increased, the lid is going to push it down, and more you are going to get more decentration.
That's right.
If it is lateral prism, base in or base out, then it's a different story.
Okay. I
Hey
think this,
Nitesh,
yeah, Dr. Nitesh is asking about the dye. What you are talking about the dye. If you would want to comment, if the dye penetrates the material, will that affect the permeability, which is the pores?
uh, good, very intelligent question, Nitesh. Uh, it what we did is it is definitely going to occupy the pores of the matrix, but it doesn't sit into the pores. It is not a solid thing that will close the pores. It's a dye, so it merges with the polymer. I'm not going to disclose my technology, but it will polymerize. It will form a bonding with the matrix and change the hue of that material. So it is not a physical thing that goes and occupies the pores.
That's right.
Oxygen permeability is because of the pores, you understand, and that's why you're asking me this. But this is not going to sit into the matrix, into the occupying the pores, whereas it is going to form a bonding, a chemical bonding with the polymer. So it's not going to affect the oxygen transmissibility.
Okay.
The pore technology we use for a soft contact lenses, where
Okay.
our the dye goes and occupies the pores, but in RGP material it doesn't happen that way.
Okay.
That's the
Yeah.
beauty of it. That's why we want no compromise in the oxygen transmissibility.
Yeah.
And we have checked this also on the oxygen. The buttons has been the lenses has been cut and painted and has been tested. Very few people has the ability to test the oxygen transmissibility of the material, but we did it incidentally from UK only.
Okay. I
So that's
see.
the father lab.
That's the final. Okay. I think we have taken almost all questions for today, but one last comment on how do you manage patients who have defogging or fogging, not defogging, sorry, it should be fogging,
Yeah.
fogging underneath a scleral lens. Is there any special recommendation or how would you go about that?
Well, that's the common problem
Yeah.
if you have a poor tears. Okay. patient with dry eyes will face this lot. Steven Johnson syndrome patient will have a miserable life. Every 2 hours they will have fogging. But a normal patient. Another thing is some of the keratoconus or most of the keratoconus patients are basically allergic patients who has conjunctival allergy, and they keep on rubbing, and that's how they get got a keratoconus and all. So those patients are susceptible for a frequent fogging. So there are extra viscous liquids that are available, like gentle gel or the unims you get. So little thicker viscous solutions, if you put into the lenses instead of normal saline, the fogging can be limited. Second thing is the front surface of the lens and the back also gets protein accumulation. In India, we offer deprotein. We clean the surface of the lenses. In the US, they don't do that. They just ask you to throw the lenses into dustbin and order a new one. But in India, we do clean the front surface. But it keeps on, once it starts, it keeps on coming. Once the protein comes, then the fogging comes. So it's a vicious circle. Uh, if the lens is new, everything is fine, then sometimes because of the bad patches, we call it dry patches on the surface of the lenses. If it keeps on coming, then you have to replace the lenses. Or many times, surprisingly, what we do is we use that Boston Simplest solution. Use the bud, the earbud, wait it, and when the lens is in the eye, you put paint it on the surface, and it will make the front surface wettable, more wettable, and the vision will be more. But if you're talking about the fogging because of the particles going into the matrix, then that is your fitting is not proper. It is irritating the conjunctiva somewhere. Some problem is there. Or if it is perfect, everything is nine, and still you are getting these issues, then the quality of tears is poor. See, dry eye is a big, total big subject, totally different subject. So only tears doesn't matter. The quality of tears matters. So you have to look for meibomian gland dysfunction. You have to see the quality of tears. You have to understand the systemic illnesses. You have to understand what kind of medicine patient is on, because that is again going to change the quality of the tears, and that will again going to affect the fogging.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's great. Wonderful discussion session. I think very interesting questions as well. Thank you, sir, for taking up your time and doing this session for us, and as not only that, but answering and giving all the comments, ideas, and suggestions towards the end. So thank you so much, Dr. Chandrasekhar, for taking up.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It was really fantastic, and nice to see Nitesh and all big notch Champa and other people who I know personally. And thanks for your time also for listening to me. I hope I've given justice to this 1 hour in your life. Thank you very much.
Of course, without a doubt. I think the chat box is filling up with all thank yous, and I think everybody is very happy, and people have definitely learned something from today. And I think 2020 is the way to go now. The year 2020 was not that great as of now for us, but I think aberration control 2020 would be a better thing ahead.
I think we should not stop at 20, lesser vision, I would say. 2030, 2040. Try to give them. See, even 2020, I strive for 2015, 2015 or 6.5, and it is possible. If
Okay.
you employ all these techniques, tomorrow you're going to say, oh, you take that extra 5 minutes, just try another lens with extra optics. Of course, even this lens, the company is giving only two options or three options. Actually, zero is nothing, plain. One is steep, one is flatter, eccentricity, but there is still in between a lot. So if you can, try and get those figures and tie up with some lab who can help you out with extra, because most of the labs will not share your parameters, whether it's zero point 0.3 eccentricity or zero point 0.8 eccentricity they have given, they'll not share with you. But if you have, you make your own lenses. That's how I started.
Yeah.
I made point 0.1, point 0.2, point 0.3, all eccentricity lenses I have. So I don't stop at whatever is given to me. I can play around with my lenses and try to get 2015. Yes, patient is happy, you are happy.
Yes, that's right. But we do have session tomorrow as well. We have at the same time, 6:30 p.m. late evening Indian time and 9 p.m. late evening again and Malaysian time, which is on medical model in optometry. So I invite everyone to join in tomorrow, same time as well. Until then, stay safe and see you all again tomorrow then. Bye bye. Thank you so much, sir. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.